I almost didn't believe my lying eyes when I read this headline at The Atlantic. Does Steve Jobs' widow know about this? Yes, some children may have died from COVID shots. What the hell you say? What? Benjamin Mazer piece over at The Atlantic. Yes, some children may have died from COVID shots. He acknowledges, rather than quickly running past it, the memo or email that was leaked from Vinay Prasad, who is the FDA's top vaccine regulator. For the first time, he wrote in an email that was leaked, the U.S. FDA will acknowledge that COVID-19 vaccines have killed American children. The FDA had supposedly identified at least 10 children who died from getting COVID shots. To say this is Ben Mazer writing in The Atlantic, to say the email was poorly received by vaccine experts and physicians would be an understatement. Of course it was. You're supposed to just repeat one of those refrigerator magnet aphorisms that those experts like to impose. Just stop thinking. Stop asking uncomfortable questions. Stop pouring through data. Just say 2 weeks to stop the spread or slow the spread or stand in your idiot circle. Put your mask on. Shut up. So this spawned, this leaked email, a series of rebuttals where, of course, the hyperventilating experts characterized Prasad's email as a threat to evidence-based vaccine policy and public health security, and so on and so forth. But again, the piece is, yes, some children may have died from COVID shots because Ben Mazer argues denial only serves the aims of the anti-vaxxers, of which I'm not one. But it's very interesting. Boy, it's very, very rare when the left concedes anything, particularly if it has a basis in truth. And this, of course, against the backdrop of a overhauling of the U.S. childhood vaccine schedule. The argument being made by those inside the Trump administration, including RFK Jr., that the American system has drifted far away from the standards of other developed nations. The memo's point into this case for the overhaul is that kids get more shots earlier and more often than children in Sweden, Norway, Japan, or almost anywhere else in the industrialized world. And it's not clear that there is a convincing explanation as to why. At least that's the position of the administration. So he's ordering a vaccine safety commission to reevaluate the timing, number, and necessity of childhood shots. And the other message here is sort of an important one, and it certainly comes out of the political and intellectual divide that was present during COVID, which is parents have the final say. Parents have the final say, not Dr. Fauci and not big pharma CEOs. Wow, 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 wow. For more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by Dr. Jonathan Ellen, primary care pediatrician, epidemiologist, and former CEO of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. Dr. Ellen, thanks for joining us again. Good to talk to you.
Good morning. It's always great to be with you.
First, just on this Atlantic piece that acknowledges the possibility that Dr. Vinay Prasad says is a reality, that there may have been children who died from getting the vaccine. That was the proximate cause of their death. And again, per his email, the FDA says they have identified 10 such cases.
Yeah, you and I have had this discussion, unfortunately, for about 6 years at this point, or 5 years.
Yeah.
And the issue is that the just follow the science quote, which is your refrigerator magnet point, is not doing much to reaffirm the value of vaccine strategy for eliminating and protecting children. And what we've witnessed is when every time you come out with this hardcore, no, it can't be possible, and for people who say, well, how could it not be at least possible, you undermine the trust people have in the value of vaccines. And I think we've talked about how the COVID vaccine had certain promises and they didn't deliver on the promises, which was you'll never get infected when we have it. And it turned out that wasn't true if you had the vaccine. It turned out that it probably did slow the spread and it did stop serious infections, but it didn't stop COVID. And people were like, well, if it's not stopping COVID, then what's the point? And I think people then coming back and saying, how could you question the COVID vaccine? And I think that undercut everything. And every time the as you call it, the vaccine experts come off really hardcore and say no, 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 and it sounds political, it doesn't bolster the science that actually does support the value of vaccine and the vaccine schedule.
Yeah, I mean, it's just some of the commentary in response to Prasad's email is of that variety, and it's just, and you use these sort of weaselly phrases that you hear from politicians, public health security. What does that even mean? Why don't you just tell me what you think of the vaccine and its potential dangers to young people versus, just give me the upsides and the downsides, the risk the risk profile of these things in both directions, and then let me make an informed decisions rather than wagging your finger at me and saying, I've got a lab coat and you don't.
Exactly. And I think that we've lost, the original battle for vaccines was kids in iron lungs with polio and kids dying in mass amounts of measles. The reason vaccines were so crucial was it stopped whole generations of children and young adults from getting sick, dying, ending up with iron lungs, ending up with polio, and having, issues. And then we sort of started escalating to the point where we started getting more vaccines for other things that cause meningitis and other problems, which is fine. And it did offer very high-level protection. And then we started moving into things like the COVID vaccines, and we started adding more and more things like the diarrhea vaccines and all these things. And all of a sudden, if you walk into a pediatrician's office and you watch a kid getting 7 shots, somewhere your brain's going to go, wait a second, isn't there a question about a risk-benefit here?
Yeah.
And we should entertain that discussion, which is your point, and I agree with that.
And so what do you think of the larger call for this overhaul? And before you criticize RFK Jr., I mean, he's 71 years old and he did 21 pull-ups the other day at Reagan National. So, just saying.
Yeah, I think this gets to the same problem I have with the left and their political views. Is I think there's a lot of skepticism about the process that they will go through doing their side of the argument, and you have these two competing issues. Where politically, we have people who say we shouldn't be doing vaccines. We have people on the other side saying politically we should always be doing vaccines and not talk about it. So far, the truth of it is, so far, they have not done any real damage to the schedule. Pulling the hepatitis B vaccine away from at the hospital is going to not cause the major problems that everyone wants to point to that it's going to cause. And they allow for vaccinations in HIV and the Hep B positive mothers. So you're not really causing the big stir, but everybody's like, oh my God, you got rid of something. But their philosophy of that board, the ACIP board, is not one of pro-vaccine, period. But yet, they've not killed it yet. And so the question is, what's going to come with the next investigation?
Well, do you think that the comparisons that have been made, as I just referenced, to the vaccine schedules in other industrialized nations with, healthy kids and public officials who are not anti-vax either, is that comparison fair? Is there some explanation that is required to provide an understanding of why we have more than Sweden, Japan, and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, we have some. I don't have, for example, the varicella vaccine is a good one. The chickenpox vaccine. The real goal, I mean, the chickenpox vaccine is, there's some kids who die of chickenpox, but there's a lot of it has to do with the impact on the children and what it has to do with the family when they have chickenpox.
Right.
And other countries don't necessarily give that vaccine. So there's certain things that, and that's where you undermine the question is, what is getting back to your risk benefit, is there a dialogue going on of non-interested parties who have, and this is why his conflict of interest thing is not a business conflict of interest, and I don't like RFK, but I am going to say that his argument about conflict of interest is, if you represent the people who want to make vaccines your life story, you're going to push vaccines harder than somebody who wants to make vaccines the worst thing in the world. So that's your whole point about this industrial complex, is that even if they're not making money on it, it's not that kind of conflict. The conflict is, I built my career about vaccines. And so now I want more vaccines to be given. And I don't know whether that dialogue is really hitting, and that's why there's some legitimacy to this question about conflict.
Do you, I mean, is there a reduced schedule? I mean, is there sort of like a basic plan? And if you want to do more, you can always do more. But is there sort of a basic plan? You say, like, these shots, I think there's general consensus that these shots make sense and should be part of the children's vaccination schedule. And then there's these other shots that are debatable, and maybe we can zero in on the debatable so we don't have to spend as much time arguing about shots that everybody sort of concedes make eminent sense.
Well, the threshold is whatever the schools require, to be quite honest. That's really, at the bottom line, is the parents come in and you have a dialogue with them and they say, I don't want this shot, I don't want this shot. You can give these 3 shots. It depends what the schools want. And if the schools allow them to exempt out, then they can do what they want. If the schools are like, we don't allow religious exemptions, for example, which is a debate going on right now, then you have to get the shots to go to school. So the schools actually, in the end, decide what the minimum threshold is. And their threshold for starting school is not exactly the same as the schedule. So it would be what you call schedule light.
Schedule light. Yeah, well, I mean, but I mean, that's sort of the point, because, of course, the schools are making their decisions about what they're going to require based on what they see promulgated by the CDC and maybe in part who they believe in these debates over the secondary schedule, if that phrase is appropriate. So I mean, so that's why the debates that are happening at the macro level, of course, influence the micro decision making. Right,
but they're not. But the threshold for schools is a little less than the threshold that ACIP and the AAP tell you to do.
And you think that is that schedule light that you're describing? Does that comport with your belief in terms of what is sensible?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Okay. I mean, I think it still has. You still have the tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis. You still have the MMR, which is measles, mumps, and rubella. You still get some of the things you need to keep from getting meningitis. That's the big one. I think some of the newer ones are not necessarily on there.
This reaction to the Prasad email that we were discussing, what does that say about a couple years removed now? Lessons learned, the prospects of humility or a change in approach when it comes to public health from sort of the collective public health community, if you will. Do you see much progress away from the mistakes that were made that we both agreed on when we started this discussion?
No, I don't. And the reason I don't know, okay, so here's the thing. I mean, again, I'm very clear. I'm against I am on the science side of this debate, but there is an extreme that has gone on. And I think generationally, until we move out of this generation of providers and leaders, and we do push some of a broader dialogue that, universities and medical schools are trying to push, we're never going to get people who stand up against the dogma of what public health has stood for the last 15, 20, 25 years. Because domestically, internationally, we're still talking about water, we're still talking about food, but domestically, we're getting into these political battles. And I don't think this generation of public health people have moved at all.
Dr. Jonathan Ellen, primary care pediatrician, epidemiologist, and former CEO of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. Dr. Ellen, thank you as always. Appreciate your time. Good to talk to you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Do you owe